They say life can change in a heartbeat, but for Thomas Markle, those changes came in a way more literal and terrifying than most of us can imagine. One moment, he was going about his day in Cebu, the sun beating down on the streets, the air thick and humid. And then it happened. A sudden, unrelenting pain in his lower leg. What he first thought was a cramp, a minor inconvenience, quickly turned into something far more sinister. His foot, once a normal color, began turning blue. Within hours, it darkened, spreading like a shadow creeping over his skin. And then it was black. Doctors would later tell him that it was life-threatening, that if immediate action wasn't taken, the consequences could be fatal. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine that. One day you're going about life, and the next, you're facing the unimaginable. A medical emergency that could cost you not just part of your body, but potentially your life. The grim reality for Thomas Markle, the estranged father of Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, is a cautionary tale wrapped in heartbreak and scandal. But what makes this story even more extraordinary isn't just the medical crisis. It's the tension simmering on the family front, a personal drama that has captured the attention of millions around the world. Because in this story, there's no ordinary family disagreement. There is a daughter who has not spoken to her father in years, a son-in-law with a fiercely protective streak, and a world watching every word, every glance, every public statement. This is the kind of drama that reads like fiction, yet it is painfully real, unfolding in real time as Thomas fights to survive not just the infection in his leg, but the emotional isolation of a family fractured by distance, decisions, and public life. The events began quietly enough. Thomas, 81, had been living a life marked by health struggles. Previous heart attacks, a stroke, and even surviving an earthquake had shaped him into a man who understood the fragility of life. But nothing could have prepared him for this sudden medical emergency. According to his son, Thomas Jr., the discovery of a blood clot in his lower leg led to a 3-hour emergency operation, an operation that would remove the leg below the knee. The decision was not optional. It was a matter of life and death. The doctors were blunt. If they did not operate immediately, Thomas might not survive the night. And while the surgery saved him from the immediate threat, it also opened a new chapter of uncertainty. The remaining left leg was already at risk, with another clot discovered in his thigh. But here is where the story takes its most shocking turn. Amidst the pain, the fear, and the surgical wards, there was silence from Meghan Markle. The daughter who has long been at the center of royal fascination has reportedly not reached out to her father. Despite the gravity of the situation, despite the life-threatening nature of his injuries, Meghan remains estranged. The world knows she has not spoken to Thomas. The family knows it. And now, the public waits, breathless, as the drama unfolds. The silence is not merely a quiet absence. It is a question, a tension, a mystery. Why hasn't Meghan made contact? Is it resentment? Fear of public scrutiny? Or is there something more complex at play? A tangled web of emotions, loyalty, and past grievances? The questions multiply the suspense, because we know that when a family is fractured in such a public way, every decision, every refusal, every delay carries weight. And the consequences of Meghan's silence are not only emotional. They may have legal, social, and reputational implications as the story continues to unfold. Into this void of silence steps Prince Harry, a man known for his fierce loyalty and protective instincts toward his wife. But what happens when loyalty collides with family estrangement? Rumors now circulate that Harry has issued, or is considering issuing, an ultimatum. The stakes are as high as they come. A father in critical condition, a daughter silent, and a husband weighing drastic measures to ensure that a meeting takes place before it might be too late. The tension is palpable. The drama is not hypothetical. It is real, raw, and unfolding in a way that no one can ignore. What makes this story so gripping is not just the medical emergency. It is the human element, the emotional undercurrent that runs beneath every public statement and social media post. Thomas's children, his friends, the doctors caring for him, even the broader public, are all swept up in a narrative of life, death, and fractured family bonds. Samantha Markle, Thomas's daughter, has spoken publicly about her father's strength and her own fears. She describes a man who has endured more than most: 2 heart attacks, a stroke, an earthquake, and now this. She prays he will survive. Her words are heavy with emotion, and yet they also carry a subtle accusation, an implied longing for reconciliation that may never come. And the questions persist. How will Meghan respond? Will she confront the past and the pain that led to years of silence? Or will the public speculation, the media glare, and the pressure from her husband force her hand? What will Harry do if the answer is no? These are not idle questions. They are the heartbeat of a story that has captivated millions, a story where every decision matters and every moment counts. To fully understand the gravity of this moment, consider the timeline. In January, Thomas Markle publicly stated that he would always love his daughter, despite disagreements over her choices and her public life. That declaration, simple and yet profound, reminds us that love does not always eliminate conflict. It exists alongside it, complicated and sometimes painfully constrained by circumstance. Fast forward to today. Thomas lies in a hospital bed, recovering from an operation that has already altered his life irrevocably, and the daughter he has longed to see remains absent. But what does absence really mean in this context? It is more than a physical distance. It is a rupture in communication, a fracture in emotional connection, a symbolic line drawn across years of misunderstandings and perceived slights. Every unanswered call, every ignored message, every silent day stretches the tension further, creating a pressure cooker situation where emotions are raw and the stakes are life-altering. And so we are left with questions that demand answers. What would you do if faced with the same choice Meghan faces? If a parent's life hangs in the balance, and the past is full of unresolved pain, do you step forward, or do you let silence win? How far should love stretch when fear, resentment, or pride is in the equation? These are the questions at the heart of this story, and they are questions without easy answers. Yet even amidst this uncertainty, the story pulses with suspense. Because in the shadows of hospital corridors and royal headlines, decisions are being made, plans are being formed, ultimatums may be considered, and the world is watching, waiting, wondering what comes next. Will Meghan answer the call, or will the silence persist? Will Harry intervene in ways that no one expects? And what will Thomas do, trapped between the fragility of his own body and the complexities of a family long divided? But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment a life-threatening emergency strikes, everything changes. For Thomas Markle, that moment came quietly, almost deceptively, on a humid morning in Cebu. 1 second, he was going about his day, shuffling through his usual routines, aware of the aches that come with age, but nothing alarming. The next, his lower leg betrayed him. A dull pain became sharp, and the color of his foot shifted from ordinary to alarming shades of blue, then black. In medical terms, this was a crisis. In human terms, it was a nightmare unfolding in real time. Imagine being told that part of your body is dying, that the blood coursing through your veins is no longer sufficient to keep your foot alive, and that the only way to survive may be to part with it forever. For Thomas, 81, the news came swiftly, delivered in a clinical tone that could not mask the gravity of the situation. His son, Thomas Jr., recalls the moment with a mix of fear and urgency. "My dad is being very brave." His foot turned blue and then black. It happened very quickly. Those words, deceptively simple, contain a weight most of us can barely imagine. The transformation was sudden, irreversible, and frightening. The kind of medical emergency that leaves a family suspended between hope and despair. Doctors confirmed the severity. A blood clot had formed, depriving the tissues in his lower leg of oxygen and nutrients. The longer it remained untreated, the higher the risk of gangrene or systemic infection. Within hours, Thomas was rushed to a local hospital for scans and ultrasounds. But even there, it became clear the local facilities could not provide the care required. The situation demanded urgent transfer to a larger, better-equipped hospital. Cebu, with its high-level medical facilities, became the arena where Thomas would fight not just for his leg, but for his life. The surgery itself was grueling. For 3 hours, medical teams worked to remove the necrotic tissue and save as much of the leg as possible. But the procedure was not merely about saving a limb. It was about saving a man whose life hung by a thread. Every decision in that operating room was a delicate balance between hope and risk. Infection, sepsis, and further complications loomed like shadows over the procedure. And yet, despite the fear, Thomas faced the ordeal with the kind of quiet resilience that only years of surviving heart attacks, strokes, and natural disasters can instill. The physical danger, however, was only part of the story. The emotional strain on Thomas was immense. Imagine lying in a hospital bed, knowing that the life you have lived so far has been shaped by choices, regrets, and loves, and now realizing that one pivotal relationship, the one with your daughter, remains unresolved. Thomas has been estranged from Meghan since 2018. She had not visited, had not called, had not reached out. And now, with death's shadow hovering over him, the silence is deafening. The absence of a daughter who has not spoken to him for years is a wound that no surgeon can stitch, no medication can heal. The fear for Thomas is not abstract. It is tangible, gripping, and immediate. Thomas Jr. describes it as a race against time. One of his doctors said the next 2 or 3 days are critical. His left leg has been removed below the knee. They were worried about infection setting in, sepsis, or gangrene. The flesh was black and dying. There was no option given. It was either, we have to operate now and remove the leg, or he may die. The starkness of that statement cannot be overstated. Every hour, every minute, is a matter of life or death. But consider the human dimension beyond the clinical facts. Thomas, who has survived heart attacks and strokes, now confronts a vulnerability that is deeply personal. The amputation is not just a medical procedure. It is a transformation that will redefine his daily life, his mobility, and his sense of self. How do you reconcile with the sudden loss of physical capability at a stage in life when every movement, every step, is already a careful negotiation? The psychological toll mirrors the physical trauma, layering fear, frustration, and uncertainty upon the already grave medical crisis. Yet amid this turmoil, Thomas displays courage that is both remarkable and haunting. His family speaks of his bravery, his stoicism, and his determination to survive. Samantha, his daughter, captures the essence of his resilience. He is a strong man, but he has been through so much. I am praying that he is strong enough to survive this. Her words, spoken with heartfelt concern, underscore the reality. Thomas is fighting not only for his life, but for the chance to see his family again, to perhaps reconcile, and to witness moments that may now hang forever out of reach. The emergency also reveals the stark logistics of medical care in crisis. Immediate decisions had to be made. Whether to operate locally or transfer to a more advanced facility, how to manage the risk of sepsis, and how to stabilize a patient whose condition could deteriorate at any moment. These decisions, though clinical, carry emotional weight. The family waits anxiously, balancing hope and fear, while the clock ticks relentlessly. In moments like these, ordinary life evaporates. There are no distractions, no trivialities. There is only survival, time, and the question of whether the loved one's absent will appear before it is too late. And here, the story takes on an almost cinematic tension. Because while Thomas battles for his life, the daughter he has not seen in years remains absent. The estrangement is no longer an abstract conflict. It has real-world, life-altering consequences. Meghan's silence, though personal, intersects with a medical crisis, creating a scenario in which every decision or indecision carries profound weight. Would a phone call, a visit, or even a message make a difference? Could reconciliation alter the emotional landscape even as the physical stakes remain perilously high? These questions hang in the air, unanswered, fueling a suspense that grips not just the family, but anyone following the story. The contrast between the urgency of Thomas's condition and Meghan's silence intensifies the drama. Every hour he spends in the hospital, recovering from a major amputation, is an hour in which a strained father-daughter relationship could either heal or fracture further. And into this tension steps Prince Harry, whose protective instincts toward his wife add yet another layer of complexity. Rumors of his potential ultimatum, whether real or speculative, create a charged atmosphere in which family loyalty, public scrutiny, and life-and-death stakes collide. The narrative becomes more than a medical story. It becomes a human drama with every element of suspense, betrayal, and emotional intensity amplified. As the days unfold in the hospital, the medical team continues to monitor Thomas with relentless precision. The remaining leg, complicated by a blood clot in the thigh, is under constant observation. Any misstep could be catastrophic. Infection could set in. Complications could arise. And the psychological burden of waiting, of hoping for reconciliation, of fearing the worst, adds a dimension that even the most advanced medical intervention cannot address. The body is being treated, yes, but the heart and mind, weighed down by years of estrangement, remain in urgent need of attention. In this chapter of Thomas Markle's life, there are lessons and questions for us all. It is a story about fragility and resilience, about the interplay between physical survival and emotional survival. It is about how past decisions ripple forward, how silence can become a shadow over life, and how the urgency of now can demand action that years of conflict have delayed. And yet, even in the darkest hours, there is the tension of hope, the possibility that someone, somewhere, might step forward to bridge the gap between life and isolation, between estrangement and reconciliation. But just when it seems that the crisis could not deepen further, the story twists yet again. For Thomas, the battle is far from over. The doctors continue to express concern about infection, about the viability of the remaining leg. The family remains on edge, balancing fear with a fragile optimism. And the public, riveted by every development, watches as the drama unfolds, unable to turn away. The intersection of personal, medical, and royal stakes ensures that the next steps, whatever they may be, will be monumental. What comes next will test not just Thomas's resilience, but the limits of loyalty, family bonds, and human courage. Every hour, every decision, every moment carries weight. And yet, in the midst of this storm, one question lingers. Will the daughter who has remained silent finally act? And if she does, what will the consequences be for everyone involved? But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine standing at the edge of a hospital room, watching someone you once loved fight for their life, and knowing that every passing second could be their last. Now imagine being that person, the daughter who has chosen silence over connection. That is the position Meghan Markle finds herself in, a position fraught with emotional complexity, public scrutiny, and personal consequence. The estrangement between Meghan and her father, Thomas Markle, has been widely reported for years, but now, under the shadow of a life-threatening medical crisis, the weight of her absence becomes painfully real. Why hasn't Meghan reached out? The question hangs in the air like a storm cloud, heavy with speculation. To outsiders, it may seem simple, a father in need, a daughter who refuses to answer. But human relationships, especially those entangled with fame, expectation, and public narrative, are rarely straightforward. Estrangement is not a single choice. It is the accumulation of moments, resentments, misunderstandings, and sometimes deliberate avoidance. In Meghan's case, the reasons are likely a complex mixture of personal grief, perceived betrayals, and the intense scrutiny that has followed her since she became a member of the royal family. The silence is deafening. In the past, Meghan's absence has been interpreted in countless ways, as a protective measure, a statement of autonomy, or even as a rebuke. Friends and biographers have speculated that her distance from Thomas stems from long-standing emotional wounds, some of which are intertwined with the pressures of public life. Being a duchess is not a casual role. It is a spotlight that illuminates every decision, magnifies every misstep, and amplifies every family conflict. For Meghan, reaching out to her father is not just a personal decision. It is a public act, one that could ripple through headlines, social media, and the royal narrative in ways few can predict. Yet, the human side of the story cannot be ignored. Despite the estrangement, Thomas Markle's condition is grave. His foot was blackened by a blood clot, his leg was amputated below the knee, and doctors remain concerned about his remaining limb. These are not distant, abstract medical risks. They are immediate, tangible, and life-altering. The very real possibility that Thomas could die without seeing his daughter adds an emotional gravity that is hard to overstate. One imagines the inner conflict Meghan must feel, a tug between past grievances and present urgency, between privacy and public duty, between the child she once was and the adult she has become. And yet, silence persists. It is a choice in itself, a choice that speaks volumes. In human terms, silence can be an act of protection, a way to shield oneself from guilt or shame. It can be a statement of defiance, a refusal to submit to emotional demands. Or it can simply be a reflection of fear, fear of confrontation, fear of vulnerability, fear of opening old wounds that may never truly heal. Whatever the reason, the absence of communication has transformed this medical crisis into a drama that is as psychological as it is physical. The emotional stakes are heightened by the public eye. Meghan's every decision is analyzed, dissected, and judged. Social media, with its unrelenting commentary, amplifies the pressure exponentially. To reach out to her father could be interpreted as guilt, hypocrisy, or strategic image management. To remain silent risks condemnation, both morally and emotionally. It is a no-win scenario in which every possible choice carries consequences. The audience watching from around the world cannot see the private pain, the late-night contemplations, or the inner conflicts that may define Meghan's decision-making process. All they see is absence. Adding to the tension is the human need for closure, a theme that resonates universally. Every family member watching Thomas in his hospital bed must grapple with the possibility that reconciliation may never come. Thomas himself, facing mortality and the permanent alteration of his body, carries both hope and resignation. His daughter's silence may feel like a final judgment, a barrier between life and the emotional fulfillment of seeing a loved one again. And in these moments, time becomes more than a measurement. It becomes a relentless adversary. Yet there are deeper layers to consider. Meghan's silence is not merely about her father. It is also about identity, autonomy, and self-preservation. Since marrying Prince Harry, her life has been irrevocably changed. She is no longer just Meghan Markle. She is the Duchess of Sussex, a public figure whose every action carries symbolic weight. Her interactions with her father are thus not only personal but public, mediated by press releases, paparazzi coverage, and social commentary. Even a private phone call or visit carries with it the potential to become a headline, an image dissected by millions, a narrative spun by commentators and journalists. The stakes are extraordinary because they are both personal and performative, blending private grief with public consequence. And then there is the question of timing. How long should one wait before taking action? At what point does the responsibility of family outweigh the complexity of past grievances? Meghan's silence can be seen as a refusal to engage or as a measured pause, a calculation about the optimal moment to act. But in situations where life and death hang in the balance, hesitation can carry a heavy moral weight. The longer she waits, the more severe the consequences, both emotionally for her father and psychologically for herself. Every day that passes is a day in which the opportunity for reconciliation may narrow, while public scrutiny continues to mount. The pressure of public expectation cannot be overstated. Meghan has navigated a world in which her every decision is scrutinized, often through a lens of intense judgment and bias. Her estrangement from Thomas Markle has been endlessly analyzed, sometimes sympathetically, sometimes critically. Now, as the story evolves, the stakes are higher than ever. Social media debates, news articles, and public speculation create a cacophony of voices demanding action, yet none of those voices can account for the complex emotions and historical context driving her behavior. It is a paradox. The more public attention she faces, the more private the decision feels, and the more complicated the choice becomes. And yet, despite all this, the possibility of action remains. Meghan has options. A phone call, a message, a visit, a mediated meeting through family members. Each option carries risk, but also the potential for profound emotional resolution. Could a simple gesture change the trajectory of the story, heal old wounds, and provide solace to a father facing mortality? Or has time, pride, and accumulated pain created a chasm too wide to cross? These are the questions that hang like shadows over every moment of this unfolding drama. It is here, in the tension between absence and action, that the story of Meghan's silence becomes most compelling. For every hour she remains unreachable, the narrative intensifies, the stakes rise, and the suspense builds. Audiences worldwide are not merely passive observers. They are participants in a story that is part human drama, part royal intrigue, part ethical dilemma. Every passing moment is a reminder that life and death do not wait for resolution, and that estrangement, however complex, carries consequences when the stakes are this high. Yet, even amid this uncertainty, there is the potential for a turning point. Because silence is not absolute. Messages can be sent, calls can be returned, visits can be arranged. The question is whether Meghan will act in time, and what the consequences of that action, or inaction, will be. The suspense is almost unbearable. Will the estranged daughter finally bridge the gap with her father, or will silence continue to dominate, leaving questions unresolved and hearts unhealed? But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. When a crisis touches the life of someone you love, instinct can override reason. And few instincts are as pronounced as Prince Harry's when it comes to protecting Meghan Markle. Known for his fiery loyalty and readiness to confront obstacles head-on, Harry is a man who has repeatedly demonstrated that family, especially his immediate circle, comes first. But what happens when loyalty collides with estranged relatives, medical emergencies, and the unrelenting glare of public scrutiny? For Thomas Markle's latest health crisis, Harry's role has become a point of fascination, speculation, and, in some circles, controversy. From the moment news broke of Thomas's leg amputation and the discovery of a blood clot in his thigh, questions immediately arose. How would Meghan respond, and what actions might Harry take if the situation escalated? Unlike many in Meghan's family who have chosen silence or passive observation, Harry is not a man to stand on the sidelines. History shows us that he has repeatedly acted decisively when it comes to protecting those he loves, whether from intrusive media, aggressive paparazzi, or perceived threats to safety and well-being. His protective instincts are nearly legendary, and they often carry both public admiration and scrutiny. But protection is not always straightforward. The line between care and coercion is thin, and Harry's involvement in family matters, especially when it comes to estranged relatives, creates a tension that is both private and public. Consider this. A father is in a life-threatening situation, a daughter remains silent, and a husband is weighing intervention. In this scenario, every decision, every word, every potential ultimatum becomes a high-stakes calculation. It is a moral, emotional, and strategic minefield where even small missteps could have enormous consequences. Harry's history provides context for understanding his potential actions. Time and again, he has demonstrated a willingness to confront conflict head-on when he perceives an injustice or threat. From his highly publicized disputes with media outlets to his protective stance toward Meghan during royal tours and personal crises, Harry has shown a readiness to act decisively and without hesitation. This is a man who has lived under scrutiny, who understands the pressures of public life, and who is willing to take bold measures to safeguard those he loves. But the question remains, what form might that intervention take in the delicate, emotionally charged case of Thomas Markle? Some speculate that Harry's involvement could be as direct as issuing an ultimatum, a situation in which Meghan is compelled to act or face consequences orchestrated by her husband. Others suggest a more strategic, behind-the-scenes approach, using family intermediaries, legal advisors, or personal appeals to encourage communication. Either way, the tension is palpable. There is the potential for a dramatic confrontation, a private negotiation that could either mend the fractured family dynamic or deepen the emotional rift. The stakes of Harry's potential intervention are high because they intersect with multiple spheres: personal loyalty, public perception, and ethical responsibility. On a personal level, Harry's actions are guided by love and concern for Meghan and her well-being. Publicly, however, any move he makes will be scrutinized, judged, and dissected by millions worldwide. And ethically, he must navigate the delicate territory between protecting his wife and respecting the autonomy of her estranged father. One misstep could be interpreted as overreach, coercion, or interference in matters that are fundamentally private. Consider the emotional dynamics at play. Harry is aware of the intense scrutiny Meghan faces, and he is equally aware of the emotional weight this family crisis carries. It is not just about logistics, medical care, or physical presence. It is about healing, reconciliation, and the potential for closure. A father facing mortality, a daughter maintaining silence, and a husband poised to intervene creates a tension that is both cinematic and deeply human. It is a story in which every choice carries emotional resonance, and every action has consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. Yet Harry's protective instincts do not operate in isolation. He must also contend with Meghan's agency. Despite his loyalty and love, Meghan is an adult, a duchess, and a public figure with her own autonomy. Her decisions, her hesitations, her fears, and her motivations must be respected, even as urgency mounts and the stakes rise. This is a balancing act: how to safeguard and influence, how to protect without controlling, and how to act decisively without overstepping boundaries. It is a nuanced dance in which strategy, empathy, and emotion intersect. Public perception adds another layer of complexity. Millions of people watch Harry and Meghan, forming opinions about their choices, their priorities, and their family dynamics. Any intervention by Harry, real or rumored, becomes fodder for headlines, social media debate, and global discussion. Yet public opinion can be a double-edged sword. While supportive fans may praise his decisiveness, critics may condemn any hint of coercion or pressure. The stakes are therefore not merely private. They are amplified by the relentless gaze of the world. The question of what Harry might do also taps into the psychological and emotional dimensions of loyalty. He has witnessed the consequences of inaction, the harm caused by silence, and the pressure of unresolved family conflicts. For him, intervention may not simply be a choice. It may feel like a moral imperative. And yet, moral imperatives in family crises are rarely clear-cut. They collide with autonomy, history, fear, and pride, creating a landscape in which every decision is fraught with risk and consequence. Perhaps most compelling is the tension created by timing. The medical emergency is immediate. Thomas's life is fragile, and his recovery will be long and complicated. Delay is not merely inconvenient, it is dangerous. Every moment Meghan does not act increases the emotional and ethical stakes for Harry, heightening pressure and urgency. It is in this crucible that Harry's instincts, strategies, and emotions converge, shaping a narrative that is as suspenseful as it is human. Amid this tension, the world watches, waiting for clues, reactions, and outcomes. Harry's role is pivotal because he embodies both the possibility of resolution and the potential for escalation. His actions, or inaction, will reverberate across family, media, and public perception. Every choice he makes carries symbolic weight, emotional consequence, and practical impact. The pressure is immense, and the stakes are life-altering. And yet, even with all this pressure, uncertainty reigns. Will Meghan respond to her father? How will Harry navigate the delicate balance between protection and coercion? What will the immediate consequences be for all involved? The father in the hospital, the daughter in silence, and the husband caught between love, loyalty, and urgency. The answers remain unknown, and that uncertainty fuels the suspense, keeping observers on edge and emotionally invested. Because when you have a father fighting for his life, a daughter withholding contact, and a husband capable of taking decisive action, the story is no longer just about medical crisis or family estrangement. It becomes a study in human emotion, loyalty, and the lengths one will go to protect those they love. Every hour, every decision, every word, or silence, can shape the trajectory of a family forever. But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. In every family crisis, there comes a moment when words are no longer enough. When the stakes are high and time is running out, some feel compelled to take a more forceful approach. For Prince Harry, that moment may be now. Thomas Markle lies in a hospital bed, his life hanging in delicate balance after a major leg amputation, while Meghan Markle, his estranged daughter, has remained silent. In situations like this, the protective instincts of a husband collide with the emotional complexities of a fractured family. And in such collisions, the concept of an ultimatum emerges. not as a threat, but as a measure of urgency, a line drawn in the sand, a last-ditch effort to compel action. Imagine receiving an ultimatum in a situation where every moment counts. The weight of the decision is immediate and unyielding. Act now or face irreversible consequences. For Meghan, such a scenario would not be trivial. It would not merely be a call to action. It would be a demand layered with emotional, moral, and public significance. Harry, as her husband, has shown time and again that when the people he loves are threatened, whether physically, emotionally, or reputationally, he steps forward with an intensity that is hard to ignore. But the question remains, what exactly could he be threatening, and what are the implications? The idea of an ultimatum in this context is multifaceted. On one level, it could be personal, an appeal rooted in love, concern, and urgency. Harry may urge Meghan to contact her father, visit him in the hospital, or even reconcile with the family she has avoided for years. On another level, it could carry social weight, leveraging the intense public and media scrutiny to influence behavior. A single gesture, or its absence, could be interpreted globally as either compassion or neglect. The pressure, therefore, is not confined to private family dynamics. It is magnified by the gaze of millions. Consider the stakes for Thomas Markle. At 81, he has endured more than most: 2 heart attacks, a stroke, an earthquake, and now a life-altering amputation. His physical vulnerability is matched only by the emotional strain of being estranged from a daughter he loves, a daughter who has not reached out despite the severity of his condition. From his perspective, the urgency is clear. Time is short, and every day without contact brings emotional weight alongside medical risk. And in this charged atmosphere, an ultimatum from Harry could be the catalyst that finally bridges the silence. But the concept of ultimatums is never straightforward. They carry risk. They can create resentment, resistance, or even further estrangement. In human relationships, being told what to do, especially in matters of the heart, can provoke defiance rather than compliance. Meghan may feel torn between her protective instincts, past grievances, and the immediate moral imperative presented by her father's crisis. The emotional landscape is complex. Love, guilt, fear, pride, and public perception all collide in a high-stakes equation. The forms such an ultimatum could take are varied. It could be a private conversation between husband and wife, heartfelt yet firm, emphasizing the necessity of action. It could be mediated through a trusted family member or advisor, creating a buffer while still communicating urgency. Or it could be a direct and unambiguous demand: visit your father now, or face consequences, personal, relational, or social. Each approach carries different risks and rewards, and each is colored by the public scrutiny that surrounds this family dynamic. Let us consider the psychological weight of a direct ultimatum. Being told to act under pressure, particularly in matters involving estrangement and past grievances, is profoundly challenging. It forces the individual to confront not only the immediate need, the father's health, but also the long-standing history that has shaped their relationship. Every hesitation is fraught with moral and emotional consequence. Every delay intensifies tension, guilt, and public scrutiny. For Meghan, this is not just a test of action. It is a test of conscience, empathy, and resilience. And yet, ultimatums can also serve as a catalyst for reconciliation. Sometimes, clarity of consequence removes ambiguity and forces a decision that might otherwise be indefinitely postponed. In this context, Harry's potential ultimatum may not be a threat, but a structured prompt, a way to cut through silence and compel action when the stakes are nothing less than life and death. For Thomas, this could be the bridge to see his daughter one last time, and for Meghan, it could be the opportunity to reconcile, however briefly, before time slips away. The stakes extend beyond personal relationships. The media, public opinion, and global audience create an environment where every move is amplified. A public perception that Meghan failed to act in the face of her father's crisis could generate intense criticism, while a gesture of compassion might be hailed as redemptive. Harry's role in framing the ultimatum, therefore, carries both private and public significance. It is a delicate balance, requiring judgment, empathy, and strategic thinking. Moreover, The ultimatum scenario raises ethical questions. To what extent can one person compel another to act, even in matters of love and family? Does the urgency of life and death circumstances justify firm intervention? How does one navigate the fine line between care and coercion, between moral obligation and personal autonomy? These questions are not merely theoretical. They are playing out in real time, shaping the decisions of three people under extraordinary pressure. The emotional intensity of this situation cannot be overstated. Thomas is vulnerable, his life and mobility precarious, yet his mind remains alert, aware, and deeply yearning for connection. Meghan's silence amplifies the stakes, creating a void that is both emotional and practical. Harry's potential ultimatum introduces the possibility of resolution, but it also introduces a new form of tension. The emotional pressure is compounded by the public gaze. Millions are watching, speculating, and judging. The intersection of personal urgency and public scrutiny creates a unique form of narrative tension, one that keeps observers riveted and emotionally engaged. And so, the story stands at a precipice. The next decision, the next word, the next gesture could redefine relationships, heal wounds, or deepen rifts. Every hour without action carries weight. Every delay intensifies the emotional stakes. For Thomas, time is finite. For Meghan, choice is complex. And for Harry, intervention is fraught with risk, responsibility, and the potential to alter the course of a family's story forever. But what comes next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. In every family drama, there are voices that carry weight, not just because of blood relation, but because they speak from proximity, history, and emotional investment. In the case of Thomas Markle's recent medical crisis, two voices stand out: Samantha Markle, his daughter, and Thomas Markle Jr., his son. Their words, their emotions, and their observations provide a window into the human stakes of this story, revealing the fracture lines within a family and the intensity of the moment in ways that the public can feel but only partially understand. Samantha Markle, 61, has long been vocal about the family's struggles. Her relationship with Meghan has been complicated, often marked by tension and public disagreements. Yet in recent days, Samantha has spoken from a place of vulnerability, concern, and sheer emotional honesty. He is a strong man, but he has been through so much. I am praying that he is strong enough to survive this, she said, her words echoing across the globe. The gravity of her statement lies not only in the medical facts, but in the emotional truth behind them. A father who has endured decades of health crises, facing now perhaps the most challenging moment of his life, and a family that is watching, waiting, and hoping for a miracle. Samantha's comments underscore the duality of public and private life. On one hand, she is speaking to the media, her words inevitably becoming part of a global narrative. On the other, she is speaking as a daughter, a sibling, and a human being concerned for a parent in extremis. Her reflections illuminate a critical tension. The family's internal struggle is not fully visible, yet it shapes every decision, every emotion, and every public statement. When she talks about her father's health, about his resilience, and about her prayers, she is revealing the deeply human stakes behind the headlines. Meanwhile, Thomas Jr. has been equally forthright in sharing the medical reality. His descriptions of the emergency are vivid, precise, and stark, painting a picture of the urgency and gravity of the situation. One of his doctors said the next 2 or 3 days are critical. His left leg has been removed below the knee. They were worried about infection setting in, sepsis, or gangrene. The flesh was black and dying. There was no option given. It was either, we have to operate now and remove the leg, or he may die. These words are clinical, yet they resonate with profound emotional weight. They reveal not just the medical stakes, but the human vulnerability underlying every decision, every procedure, and every moment of uncertainty. The perspectives of Samantha and Thomas Jr. also highlight the complexity of family dynamics in crises. They are not just observers, they are participants, emotionally, practically, and morally. They have been forced into roles that require both decision-making and emotional labor, balancing concern for their father with awareness of the estrangement and the potential for public scrutiny. Their reflections provide a critical lens through which the story unfolds, helping the audience understand not only the medical urgency, but also the emotional, relational, and ethical dimensions of the drama. It is striking, too, how their words reveal both admiration and worry. Thomas Jr. emphasizes his father's bravery, while Samantha underscores his history of resilience, heart attacks, strokes, an earthquake. They speak of a man shaped by adversity, someone who has survived immense challenges, yet now faces perhaps his most profound test. Their testimonies humanize the narrative, turning what might be abstract news into a story of courage, vulnerability, and familial love under strain. Beyond the medical realities, their statements also bring to light the tension with Meghan. They do not merely describe the crisis, they contextualize it, framing the estrangement as a critical element of the story. Every moment of silence, every missed call, every day without communication is magnified by the urgency of Thomas's condition. The voices of Samantha and Thomas Jr. convey a mixture of frustration, longing, and hope. A hope that Meghan might act, a longing for family reconnection, and frustration at the delays that keep their father emotionally isolated at a moment when support could mean everything. Public reaction to their statements adds another layer. Millions of viewers, readers, and followers absorb their reflections, interpreting every word through the lens of celebrity, royalty, and familial expectation. Yet the real story lies beneath the headlines. The lived experience of a family grappling with mortality, estrangement, and emotional urgency. Samantha and Thomas Jr. provide a human anchor to a story that could otherwise be lost in speculation, rumor, or media sensationalism. Their voices remind the audience that beyond the glamour, the scrutiny, and the headlines, this is a deeply human drama with stakes that are both immediate and profound. Their commentary also provides insight into the psychology of family crisis. It is one thing to report a medical emergency. It is another to articulate the emotional reality for those closest to the patient. Samantha and Thomas Jr. convey fear, hope, anticipation, and grief, revealing how crises amplify emotions, strain relationships, and highlight unresolved tensions. Their perspectives illustrate the complexity of navigating loyalty, concern, and public attention in a moment of intense vulnerability. Moreover, their reflections underscore the broader ethical and emotional questions at play. How should Meghan respond? What is the role of the spouse, Prince Harry, in this equation? How does one balance privacy with moral responsibility, public perception with personal action? Through Samantha and Thomas Jr., we gain a clearer understanding of these dynamics. They are not merely spectators, but active participants, grappling with questions that have no easy answers and consequences that affect every member of the family. Finally, their voices provide a lens through which the audience can connect emotionally to the unfolding story. Their candid accounts, blending factual reporting with heartfelt reflection, draw viewers into the moment, allowing them to feel the tension, the urgency, and the hope that defines this crisis. They remind us that, at the core, this is a story about love, loyalty, and the fragile nature of human connection, about what it means to be family in moments when the stakes are nothing less than life itself. But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. In today's hyper-connected world, a personal family crisis rarely remains private for long, especially when it involves a member of the royal family. Thomas Markle's recent health emergency is not just a medical story or a family dispute. It is a global spectacle, unfolding under the relentless gaze of traditional media outlets, social media platforms, and public opinion. The reaction to this unfolding drama is as intense as the situation itself, adding layers of pressure, scrutiny, and emotional complexity for everyone involved. From the moment news of Thomas's leg amputation became public, headlines erupted across the world. Media outlets recounted the grim details, the discovery of a blood clot, the emergency surgery, the risk to the remaining leg, and, most poignantly, the estrangement between father and daughter. Each article emphasized both the medical urgency and the emotional tension, highlighting Meghan Markle's silence as a focal point of discussion. Every word, every quote from family members became fodder for analysis, speculation, and debate. The story became more than news. It became a narrative of suspense, drama, and moral questioning. Social media amplified the reaction exponentially. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became arenas of debate, opinion, and judgment. Fans, critics, and casual observers weighed in on Meghan's decisions, Harry's potential intervention, and the ethical implications of family estrangement. Hashtags trended, comment threads exploded, and viral posts debated the morality, compassion, and responsibility of the Duchess. Some praised Meghan for her past resilience and private decision-making, while others condemned her silence as neglect. The intensity of these reactions underscores the unique intersection of celebrity, royalty, and personal tragedy in the digital age. Public scrutiny has a profound emotional impact, both on those at the center of the story and on the family watching from afar. For Thomas Markle, every news headline is a reminder that the world is watching, analyzing, and judging a deeply personal crisis. For Meghan, the public gaze adds pressure to a decision that is already emotionally complex, magnifying the stakes and intensifying the moral and ethical considerations. For Prince Harry, the global attention transforms personal protective instincts into strategic calculations, as any move he makes could be interpreted through the lens of fame, loyalty, or even control. Media coverage has also introduced narrative framing that affects perception. News outlets often highlight conflict, estrangement, or controversy because it drives engagement. As a result, the story is frequently presented in a way that emphasizes tension over empathy, speculation over nuance, and drama over the subtlety of human relationships. Headlines focus on questions like, will Meghan visit her dying father? Or Harry's ultimatum, what's next? Inviting readers to invest emotionally while leaving critical context in the shadows. This framing creates a pressure cooker for everyone involved, heightening emotions and creating expectations that can influence decisions in real time. The speed and intensity of social media reactions are unprecedented. Within hours of updates, millions of users comment, share, and create narratives around the story. Memes, viral videos, and threads dissect every detail, amplifying emotional responses and creating a feedback loop that can be overwhelming for those at the center. Public opinion can feel like a tidal wave, relentless and often contradictory, cheering some actions while condemning others, applauding reconciliation while criticizing hesitation. In this environment, private decisions become public spectacle, and every word or silence carries amplified consequences. The scrutiny is not just digital. Traditional media continues to follow the story with fervor. News segments, interviews, and opinion pieces analyze statements from Samantha Markle, Thomas Jr., and even family insiders. Each quote is dissected, contextualized, and interpreted, creating a narrative that mixes fact, speculation, and commentary. The relentless attention ensures that the family is never alone in their decisions, and that private moments, calls, potential visits, emotional reconciliations, exist under the glare of global observation. Public reaction also reveals societal expectations and moral judgments. Millions of people engage with the story as if they are stakeholders, applying their own frameworks of right and wrong, duty and compassion. The discussion often centers on universal themes: filial responsibility, moral obligation, and the ethics of estrangement. Audiences project their own experiences, expectations, and emotions onto the narrative, turning the family crisis into a global conversation about what it means to act with love, responsibility, and empathy in times of extreme pressure. The consequences of public scrutiny extend beyond perception. They can influence behavior. Knowing that millions are watching, Meghan and Harry must consider how every action or inaction will be interpreted. Every choice carries a dual dimension: personal consequence and public consequence. The interplay between private decision-making and global attention creates a tension that is both exhilarating and exhausting, intensifying the stakes in ways that are difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. Public reaction also highlights the paradox of privacy in the age of celebrity. While Thomas Markle's health is an intensely private matter, the fame of his daughter transforms it into a public event. The very nature of celebrity ensures that personal crises are amplified, dissected, and debated, creating pressures that ordinary families rarely face. Every gesture, every message, every phone call, or lack thereof, is scrutinized, interpreted, and judged. The family must navigate not only emotional and medical complexity, but also the amplified expectations and criticisms of a global audience. And yet, amid the noise and scrutiny, there is a profound human interest that resonates universally. Beyond the headlines and social media commentary lies a story about family, mortality, love, and reconciliation. The public, in engaging with the narrative, responds to themes that are deeply relatable: the fear of loss, the complexity of human relationships, and the urgent desire to mend fractured bonds before it's too late. This is what makes the story compelling, what keeps audiences emotionally invested, and what ensures that the drama continues to unfold with intensity and suspense. The public's engagement also fuels anticipation, creating a sense of suspense akin to watching a narrative unfold in real time. Every new update, whether from the hospital, family statements, or media reports, feels like a plot twist in an ongoing story. Audiences wait, watch, and speculate, emotionally tethered to outcomes they cannot control. This intense engagement adds pressure to the central figures, influencing perceptions, decisions, and, potentially, actions. In the midst of this global scrutiny, one thing is certain: every move counts. The family's decisions, Meghan's potential response, Harry's involvement, and Thomas's recovery are all observed, interpreted, and judged by millions. The interplay of personal, familial, and public stakes creates a narrative tension that is almost unbearable, compelling, and deeply human. It is a story of love, conflict, mortality, and moral responsibility, told on a stage as vast as the world itself. But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. A leg amputation is more than a surgical procedure. It is a life-altering event that transforms every aspect of daily existence, from mobility and independence to emotional resilience and identity. For Thomas Markle, the gravity of the operation is magnified by his age, health history, and the suddenness of the crisis. At 81, he has endured multiple health challenges over the decades, including heart attacks, a stroke, and even surviving an earthquake. Yet nothing prepared him, or his family, for the immediacy and severity of losing part of his leg below the knee. The medical reality of amputation is complex. Physically, the procedure involves removing necrotic tissue to prevent infection and save the patient's life. In Thomas's case, the decision was urgent. The flesh of his lower leg had turned black, signaling that it was dying. Blood clots in his thigh posed an ongoing threat to his remaining limb. Sepsis and gangrene, conditions that can quickly become fatal, were imminent dangers. Doctors acted swiftly, but even with immediate intervention, the recovery process is grueling and fraught with risk. Recovery begins with stabilizing the patient. Pain management, infection prevention, and monitoring for complications such as blood clots or poor wound healing are critical. In the days immediately following surgery, Thomas is vulnerable, not only physically but emotionally. The trauma of losing a limb, particularly under emergency circumstances, can trigger intense feelings of fear, grief, and anxiety. Even a man described as strong and resilient by his children is forced to confront his vulnerability in ways that test both body and spirit. Mobility is the first major hurdle. Without one leg, simple tasks like walking, standing, or navigating stairs become monumental challenges. For someone of Thomas's age, these tasks are further complicated by age-related weakness, balance issues, and cardiovascular concerns. Physical therapy becomes essential, often involving a carefully structured program to rebuild strength, improve balance, and develop strategies for independence. Assistive devices such as crutches, walkers, or wheelchairs may be necessary, and the psychological adjustment to using these aids can be profound. The emotional toll is equally significant. Amputation can evoke feelings of loss, frustration, and diminished autonomy. Patients may experience grief not only for the lost limb, but also for the lifestyle changes that follow. Thomas, who has endured much over the decades, now faces the stark reality of vulnerability and dependence. Emotional support from family, friends, and medical professionals is critical, yet in his case, estrangement from his daughter adds a painful dimension. The absence of familial contact, particularly from Meghan, is an emotional void that cannot be treated with medication or therapy alone. Medical follow-up is intensive. Wound care, monitoring for infection, and rehabilitation exercises dominate daily routines. The risk of complications such as phantom limb pain, where the patient feels sensations in the missing limb, is high, especially in elderly patients. Proper management requires a combination of pain relief strategies, therapy, and psychological support. Each day is a careful negotiation between progress and caution, with little room for error. The social implications of amputation are also profound. For Thomas, the change is not just physical but relational. Family dynamics, independence, and public perception all shift. Tasks once taken for granted, getting dressed, cooking, walking outside, now require adaptation. This physical dependency can exacerbate emotional stress, particularly when family support is limited or delayed. The absence of contact from Meghan, the daughter he has longed to see, compounds these challenges, creating a dual burden of physical limitation and emotional isolation. Technology and modern prosthetics offer potential solutions, but they are not panaceas. Prosthetic limbs require time, adaptation, and training, particularly for older patients. Thomas's age and health history may limit the feasibility of advanced prosthetic solutions, meaning that he will need ongoing support to maintain mobility and independence. The process is gradual, demanding patience, resilience, and careful management. Every milestone, standing unaided, walking a few steps, mastering a prosthetic, becomes a hard-earned victory. Psychological resilience is key. Amputation can trigger depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress, particularly in the elderly or in those experiencing additional life stressors. Thomas's history of surviving major health crises demonstrates a capacity for resilience, yet the combination of physical loss, medical urgency, and emotional estrangement creates a unique challenge. Family support, counseling, and therapeutic interventions are critical to helping him navigate the emotional aftermath, restore confidence, and maintain mental well-being. Rehabilitation extends beyond the hospital walls. Thomas must adapt his living environment to accommodate new mobility limitations, potentially modifying his home for accessibility, installing supports, and creating safe pathways. The practical realities of daily life become immediate concerns. Navigating stairs, using bathrooms, moving through narrow spaces. Every adaptation is a reminder of the life-altering nature of the surgery, reinforcing the physical and psychological impact of the crisis. Finally, the recovery is not linear. Setbacks are common, whether due to infection, pain, or emotional distress.